Everyone, this is Brandon, and today we're recording an exclusive screencast for Web Design Tuts. Today we're going to be creating a very simple user interface kit. If you guys aren't familiar with one of these, let me explain to you a little bit about what they're used for. The main thing you're going to use them for is if you're working on a really big web project that has lots of different pages and requires a lot of different mock-ups and wireframes and stuff like that. Having one of these files basically allows you to store all of your basic styles and form fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, all that kind of stuff in one central location. The great thing about that is if later on somebody else on your team decides to work on it, or say the client wants to go and hire somebody else to finish up the work that you started a couple of years from now, it basically allows them to have this one main file that's a repository for all the main design styles that you're going to be working with inside of the actual mock-ups. So it's a pretty useful tool to have in any web project. Today we're going to go through how to create some of the basic elements that you might be using. The demo that you guys are going to be downloading is going to be in a green color, but I'm going to show you guys in this video how to create a simple blue one. The reason I'm going to be doing that is simply because I want to show you guys how versatile this thing is and how easy it is to basically reskin and create your own version of it. So let's go ahead and dive in here. We're going to be referring back to this demo a couple times just in case we forget any of the basic styles. But let's go ahead and start by creating a new document. We're going to create it at 600 pixels by 400. Now, the size obviously is kind of up to you guys. It's completely up to you if you want a really big one. You guys may need different elements that are not shown in some of the things that we're going to be seeing here. But we're going to start at 600 by 400. I'm just going to draw a basic rectangle. I'm going to turn it white really quick, and then I happen to have this very basic grid texture that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to apply it as a pattern, and you'll notice it's just a very light, faint grid. You guys may not even be able to see it on the video itself. The reason I'm doing that is basically, if you look at the demo, it kind of helps some of these fields pop. It helps you understand, where the element begins and where it ends. So that's that. All right, so where do we get started? The first thing I want to do here is I'm just going to draw a simple box up here at the top. This is completely optional for you guys. But the first thing I like to do is label my documents in case somebody comes along and finds it later on. So we're going to give this a very quick title with some text. Let's go ahead and resize the text so it's a reasonable size. Now this would be a good chance for you guys to basically add the company name that you guys might be working with, or the project name, the name of the person that's working on it. It's just a simple way to label your file so that somebody, when somebody opens it, they can see exactly what's going on in here. All right, so let's go ahead and group that up into a new folder and name it title. Okay, so that's labeled. We're going to go ahead and hit the save button. And we're good to go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to create a new layer. And we're going to start with a rounded rectangle. And the radius that I want here is going to be 2 pixels. And we're basically just going to draw a very quick text field using the rounded rectangle. Now, if you guys want to notice really quick, I'm just going to hit Control-Alt-Z. I'm looking up here at the info box, which you guys can grab from the window info layer, or you can just press F8. But I'm looking at this as I'm drawing it to make sure I get my dimensions correct. Now, I'm clicking, I'm holding, and I'm dragging this out. And the dimensions I'm looking for in this particular one is going to be, let's say about 300 by 30. There we go, perfect. The reason I'm, looking over here is because it tells me exactly what's going on. You guys may want like a really big, chunky text field. You guys may want something, smaller and a little bit more versatile. It's totally up to you guys what you guys want. So that's that. The next thing we're going to be doing here really quickly is adding a very small stroke to it. The stroke is going to be on the outside. And here's the first place where we're going to be picking our colors. So the color that we're going to be using here is, basically what we're going to want to use throughout the entire UI kit and through the entire branding process. If your client has a particular color that they're using already, you're probably going to want to stick with something close to that. Often bold colors like a bright red isn't going to be a great color to work with. So we're just going to pick something that's close to, a nice blue that we might want to work with. So at this point, I'm just kind of playing around. I'm looking over here and I'm seeing, what basic colors I like, right? Okay, so I think that one looks pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do is going to hit Control J. We're just going to pull this on down. What that does is it duplicates our layer. And I'm going to do that one more time because if you guys look back at the download in the demo itself, we have 3 different fields here. So we're going to create 3 different versions of this basic text field. All right, so the second one is basically going to be the focus field. And the reason we're going to be working with this is basically, when the mouse hovers over a certain field, you basically want, the user to be able to detect that they are hovering over it and it's the active field. So the reason, or the way that we kind of differentiate that, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can basically add, a color overlay and, help people understand that they're hovering over something. That's one way that you can do it. You can add a, drop shadow. You can do a couple of different things. What we're going to do here is we're adding a basic outer glow. You'll notice that I've set the blend mode to normal, because normally it's set to screen. If you set it to screen, it's pretty hard to see it on top of a white background. So we've set it to normal, and that's good. And now let's go ahead and group these up into a new folder. We're going to call it text fields. And now let's go ahead and add some text. And now we're going to select the character, and we can just go ahead and use Arial. That's fine. Obviously, you guys don't want to use any, wild and crazy, fonts, because this is going to be going on the web, and basically you don't, really want to tinker with anything that doesn't need to be tinkered with. Especially when you're dealing with text fields, it's pretty hard to get, font replacement happening correctly inside of a text field, and if it goes wrong, it basically means that users cannot use that text field, which is not a good thing. So right now I'm simply centering the text field vertically and getting it about in the right place. Let's open up the layers so you guys can see what I'm dealing with again. I'm going to hit Control J one more time, move this down, and we're going to do the same thing one more time. All right, and let's go ahead and replace the text in these so that they're accurately reflecting everything. Alright, so now we have our text, but let's say we want to have the text be a different color. Black is pretty boring at this point. So again, I'm just going to basically go in here, find the basic blue color that we're working with, and I'm going to work away from that. And for text colors, you basically want something a little bit darker so it's more readable. So that looks like it's about right there. So that's great. So those are the 3 main fields. We have a text field, we have the focus field, and we have a drop-down. But now we need to create our drop-down button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this basic layer, I've duplicated it, and now I'm going to basically mask it off in the area where I want the button to be. So I'm basically going to draw a rectangle, and all I'm trying to do is mask off this little section right here. So I've created my marquee, and now I'm going to go over here, I'm going to press the mask button. And this is going to add a layer mask. So you're going to see now the border or the stroke has been limited to what our mask is. So now we're free to basically go in here and add our own styling. So when you're creating a button, the main thing that you really want to do is make it look like a button, right? How we do that is adding some basic lighting effects that makes it look like it pops out just a little bit. You don't really need anything too dramatic. There's a time on the web when adding really, really glossy stuff was all the rage. I think nowadays just a very basic, bevel or very basic gradient can do a lot to kind of help people understand that it's something that you can press down on, right? All right, so that looks about right there. I think I like that. So the next thing we need is the little drop-down arrow. Now, how I'm doing that is, you can obviously create your own custom one in Illustrator. You can use the pen tool. We're going to go the simple route right now. We're going to the custom shape tool, and then I've basically selected this little arrow, I think it's right here, from that menu, and I'm going to draw it really quickly. Now I'm holding the shift key because if we don't, you can basically distort it quite a bit. I'm holding the shift key so it retains a really nice shape, and I'm basically getting it to about the size that I want it. That looks good right there. Oops, okay, so you'll notice that I'm drawing on top of this other layer, which means we're doing nothing. So we're going to go ahead and create a new layer and press it again. Now, whenever you create a new layer, it usually inherits the styles from the last layer that you created. So now we have this little button, but we're going to want to rotate it, and I'm pressing Control T, which is the free transform button, and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees so that we basically have an arrow pointing down. I'm going to scale it just a little bit more, pressing Control T, to get it about in the right size and place that I want it. And I think it was better right there. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have a basic black arrow. That's good, but let's give it a little bit of personality by coloring it in. And this is one of those cases where it might even make sense just to grab the color from the text that we used. The reason you might do that is so basically, you know, all your buttons and your text and everything matches up. It looks like it's the same. You'll notice if you pick like another, you know, blue, for instance, it's just going to feel a little funky. It's going to feel a little bit off. So if you're working with a color that, you know, is from the same palette that you've selected for the brand, it's going to look about right. All right, so that looks pretty good right there. So the next thing I want to do, it's a very simple effect, but I want to add a very light inner shadow. I don't want anything heavy, so I'm setting the distance to 2 and the size to 3, and I'm going to drop the opacity, you know, probably back to about 50% or so. And again, I'm looking at this as I'm tinkering with this up here. If it's really dark, it looks black. If it's really light, it looks like there's nothing there. We just want something that's, you know, kind of in the middle. So let's go ahead and set it to 50. And I think that's about right. Now, the reason, you know, that we're doing that, it's kind of up to you guys. It's up to the personality of the brand that you're going to be working with. But it kind of adds a little bit of an inset effect. It makes the button itself feel a little bit more tactile, and I like that. So that looks good. All right, so let's go ahead and group these two and name it something new. And we can even go ahead and grab the entire set and give it a new name. So now we basically have a new folder with this element. The cool thing about that is if we're working with a new file, we can basically drag it into this other file and just drop it in there, and we are ready to go. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with the other two. Now, obviously, if you guys want to go back and edit, you know, the size of these later on, say you don't want the width to be that big, we're going to select the, from the pen tool options, the convert point tool, and I'm basically holding down the shift button, and I'm selecting those 2 points, and we're going to move it in or out. And what that does is it basically resizes everything. The problem with using Control T is you're going to get some weird distortion on the rounding. That's not really, you know, an effect that we're trying to get if we're trying to have a, you know, perfect comp. You know, so you want to use that convert point tool. It's the quickest way to get it done, you know, without really ruining the nice rounded effect that we have on the outside. So that's our text fields. Okay, so good. The next thing we're going to want to do, and we're going to, you know, probably start moving pretty quickly here, if you'll notice, is we're going to create the checkboxes. So again, looking up at the info box, I've selected the rounded rectangle tool. I'm holding down the shift button. If you don't, you get all sorts of weird funky shapes. If you hold down shift, you get a perfect square. So what I'm looking at the info box for is because I want to get a perfect 12 pixel box. And now that I have it, now 12 pixels, you know, it just happens to be a number that I like working with. The reason I like working with it is it's about the right height for a, you know, text field. Most text on the web is around 12 points, so if you have a 12-point checkbox, it's about the right size, so it doesn't feel overly big or overly small. So let's kind of move that into place. One thing you'll notice as I'm working on all of this stuff is I like to work in a pretty organized fashion. The reason that I do that is simply it helps things, later on when you go back to open up this file a year from now. If everything is kind of in a nice organized place and everything is named properly over here, it's easy to pick up, from where you left off rather than having, 50,000 layers that are unorganized and, kind of buttons that are here and there. It's pretty hard to pick up, from where you've left off if things aren't organized. Okay, so we've created our little radio button, but it's black. We might want to make it white. Oops, it's not quite white. And we could give it like a stroke or something like that. That's fine. But again, that's pretty basic, and we want to retain that personality that we've been working with so far. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the button style that we created over here. I'm going to right-click on it. Maybe I can get it so you guys can see it. And I'm going to select Copy Layer Style. And what that's going to allow us to do is go up to this new shape that we have right here and select Paste Layer Style. And now we basically have a little button that mimics the same style that we have up here. It's pretty easy. I do a lot of copying and pasting of the layer styles. The reason we're going to do that is so that everything is the same and you don't have to duplicate it over and over and over. So let's go ahead and duplicate that layer, move it over just a bit here, and we're going to create a new layer, and we want to add our little check. So again, you can create this using the pen tool. We're going to take the easy way out in this demo. We're just going to select a check from the custom shapes, and we're going to draw it on here. And we're dealing with the same basic idea here where, we don't want this to plain black, so we're going to go back to this layer over here that we had. I'm going to select this color using the copy button, and I'm going to go back over to the check and add it. And then we're going to select the style, and we're going to add the style. So now we have a basic, little check there that uses the same style as that button that we had up here. All right, and I'm noticing one thing as I keep kind of looking back up here is the distance between this is a little bit less than the distance between this right here. So I'm going to go back into this mask, and I'm going to use the keyboard to nudge it over 1 pixel. And you'll see you can kind of move this all the way around if you want. All I want is 1 pixel though, so it kind of matches up the distance between those two elements. Perfect. Okay. All right, so now we have our basic checkboxes, so I'm going to group them up, label it checkboxes, and we can go one step further, obviously, and we can select Control-G and group these up and make it a checked box. And this one doesn't really need a group because it's obviously just a single layer. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is creating the radio buttons. So again, looking up here, we want about 12 pixels. That looks about right. We're going to copy that same layer style that we were dealing with before. Oops, that looks like I grabbed the wrong one. So let's go ahead and grab it. Copy. Paste. Perfect. Alright, so now we have our basic empty radio button. And we're going to move it over. That looks about right. And to basically make it look like it's been selected, we're going to add a very light circle in the middle. This is going to be something you might need to tinker with a little bit because it can be tricky to get it perfectly in the middle. So again, we're selecting the same color that we were dealing with before from the text. And let's go ahead and add that inner shadow. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm selecting the navigator. I'm going to go to 800%. So things are about to get really big. I'm using the navigator to navigate down. And the idea here is we want to get this dot perfectly in the center. One thing you might notice, I happen to kind of get it perfectly in this first try right here. But let's duplicate it and scale it out. One thing you might notice from time to time is it's hard to get it perfect. So like you'll notice right here, I've rescaled it, and it doesn't quite want to be perfect. It's either too close here or it's too close up here. You're going to need to kind of mess with the scaling to get it perfectly in the center. It can often be a little bit tricky to get done. It's just something you got to deal with. So now we have a small one, or we have a big one up here, and then we have a smaller version. I think in this case, I kind of like the bigger one. That's kind of nice. So let's go ahead and group these up. And yes, I noticed a little typo there. All right, we're going to go ahead and delete that layer. Okay, so excellent. Now we have a very basic set of checkboxes, a very basic set of radio buttons. Now let's go ahead and create this little D-pad thing that I've been working with a little bit. Basically, just going to grab this and move it up and over, and I've just copied the layer for this arrow. Places that you might use this D-pad element, say you might use it in a jQuery slider, you might use it in a scroll bar, you might just need it in some graphic that you guys are working with. It's good basically just to have a very basic set of arrows laying around sometimes. So that's why I like to kind of create this. So let's go ahead and select both layers now and duplicate it. And all I'm doing is just using the free transform button and rotating things, to 90 degrees. And now we have a basic D-pad. And again, you can use it in menu items. You can use it all, sorts of different places. It's not something you think that you're going to need, but it's always something that you end up, using at some point. So I'm just going to go ahead and move this stuff over now, because we're going to start working on the loader. Let's go ahead and center that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be dealing with is, well, let's go ahead and create the buttons first. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to, I'm hitting Control and clicking on the text field, and we're going to copy that. And we're going to move it up to the top. Sometimes it can be a little bit finicky. You got to get it just in the right place. And we're going to move that down. And again, I told you guys earlier to adjust the size of things, we want to use the Convert Point tool. And we're going to nudge that over just a little bit. And what we basically want to get is two different shapes. That looks about right there. And obviously, we just want to grab the layer style that we've been dealing with this whole time. We're going to copy it. And we're going to paste it on both of these really quick. Now let's add some text. To add the text, I'm just going to grab the same text that we had before and duplicate it. Because this is a button, we want to basically make it bold. Help people understand that it's a link. And we're just going to make that bold really quickly. And let's go ahead and use a smooth raster method just to be safe. Perfect. Now one thing that you may have seen from time to time is sometimes people will add a very light outline to it. So how we're going to create that is we're going to add drop shadow, and let's go ahead and set it to 100%. But we're going to set the blend mode to screen this time, and we're going to make it white. And lastly, we're going to set the distance to 1 and the size to 1, and may even set it to 0. That looks pretty good there. So what you're going to notice here is the text itself has a very light kind of highlight to it. It makes it look almost like it's been depressed just a little bit. Again, it's a very small detail, but it's something that can kind of make your buttons feel a little bit more friendly. So the 100% opacity looks a little bit intense, so let's drop it down to 75, and I think that looks pretty good right there. And obviously we're just going to hit Control J and copy this over. Perfect. Alright, so now we have two different buttons, but we want to have one have the basic mouse over, effect to it. So let's go ahead and group these up really quickly. Alright, so now we have a group of our buttons. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys a very quick trick to basically making a button look like it's depressed. If you have a basic gradient on the button, the quickest way to make it look like it's depressed is to go into the gradient and just hit reverse. For some reason, it just makes it look like the button's been pressed down. It's a really simple effect, but it always works, and it's kind of fun to play with. You can obviously, tinker with the gradient. You can make things look a little bit darker. You can make things look a little bit lighter. It's kind of up to you guys, but we're just going to deal with a very simple inversion of the gradient right now. Alright, so that looks pretty good there. The next thing we're going to do is a very simple lighting trick. This doesn't work if we're trying to create a button in CSS, but it will work if we're trying to create it as an image. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the brush tool, and we're going to select a pretty big brush. 120 pixels is what I'm dealing with right here, and let's set the color of what we're going to be drawing with to within the same range that we've been working with this whole time. And I'm just going to go ahead and press down once, and you get this kind of weird bubble. But what we're going to do is we're going to drop it down just a little bit. We're going to hold down the control button and select the layer here. And we're going to go to our little, gradient bubble, and we're going to hit the mask button. So now you guys will notice that you basically have this bubble that moves around. And if we position it just perfectly at the top, it can often look like it's almost like a little piece of light that's hanging over the top there. So in our case, I'm trying to make it look like it's almost shadowed. But we want to get just perfect, so again, we're just kind of tinkering with these colors. I think that looks pretty good right there. Now, obviously, I'm showing you guys the very simplest version of this effect. You guys can kind of get as wild and crazy with it as you want. Okay, so the final thing that I like to add to my buttons is a very simple drop shadow. We're just going to go in here and we're going to hit, let's say, 2 pixels and 2 pixels. And I think we'll just do 1. So the distance is 1 and the size is 2. And the opacity, let's go ahead and set it to around 50. And let's go ahead and do that same thing over here. This is one case where you can't just copy and paste it because you'll copy the inverted gradient as well, obviously. Okay, perfect. And the next thing I'm going to do is these look kind of crunched together, so let's kind of spread this out a bit. Perfect. All right, so now let's go ahead and create the loader that we were looking at in here. You're going to notice this is a pretty basic method for creating this. We're going to select the text field again, copy it. The reason we're dealing with that is it's the rounded rectangle that we like. And we're going to move it on down. And let's go ahead and resize it. Obviously, the size can be anything you want, but I just want it to fit in my document here. So I'll make it about the width of the 2 different download buttons together. All right, and then we're going to copy it, and then we're going to make the little inside handle. So we're going to move it in, and the next thing we want to do is we want to move it in 2 pixels from the left, up 2 pixels from the bottom, and down 2 pixels from the top. And what that does is it creates a basic shape that's kind of sitting nicely just inside of that little rectangle that we created. The next thing we want to do is we want to set a basic inner shadow. Again, we're not dealing with anything too intense here, just enough to kind of make it look like it's, inset. And then we want to create a basic gradient overlay. The gradient, when I'm creating a basic slider like this, you guys can create a really light slider if you want. I like to work with, really dark colors in the background and nice, bright, vibrant colors on the foreground. Obviously, when you're dealing with, that kind of color scheme, it helps people understand, um, you know, that darker things are set back and lighter things are set forward. And now we want to go ahead and create that button. So I'm going to start with the color styles that we had from before. That actually looks pretty good, but let's go ahead and make it a little bit more vibrant just to be safe. So anytime you want to make something look more vibrant on the color scale, you kind of want to move closer to the right. This would obviously be really vibrant. We just want just a little bit more vibrancy. And same thing here. I think we can go that far. And let's go back over here and let's kind of darken it up and add just a little bit more vibrancy. Again, you're going to notice that a lot of this is just kind of like tinkering with these things. That looks pretty good. So the next thing we have is this stroke. Now, the stroke is fine as, just a basic, color. We can set it to white. I like to kind of mess with the gradients here. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the fill type to gradient. And we're going to set the angle to either 90 or minus 90. And we're going to set the bottom half. And again, we're looking over here as we're working with this. We're going to set the bottom color close to the background and just a little bit lighter to make it pop. And then we're going to set, this basic hover color to something a little bit lighter. And again, you're going to notice that what it creates is a very simple, kind of idea that, this thing has a nice highlight on the top of it. So that looks good. We're going to go back to the stroke of the background layer. And let's set it to be something a little bit darker so that it feels about right. Okay, good. All right, so now we have this little, bar here that, can scroll back and forth, or, if you were to grow it, it may look like it's loading something. But to kind of complete the loading effect, let's go ahead and, basically make it so that it has these nice diagonal lines across it. It's a pretty simple effect, but again, it's very effective when you get it perfect. Okay, so how we're going to do that, we're going to draw a very basic, simple rectangle, nice and tall, and about that size. You guys can tinker with this however you want. And the next thing we want to do is we want to skew it. So I'm going to hit Edit, Transform, Skew, and we're going to try to select it so we can lean it off to the diagonal here. That looks about good. And let's create a couple of these. You guys can create as many as you need for the layer that you're working with. And then I'm going to select one of them and select, make sure you guys can see this, create clipping mask. And then we're going to drop the other one inside of that. Now let's make these white really quick so you guys can see what we're working with here. Oh, you know what? I noticed because we have a color overlay on this one, or a gradient overlay, you're not going to be able to see it. So what we want to do then is group these two layers. Then we're going to select the layer shape, and then we're going to go over the group and select a mask. So now you have your little candy stripe there. Perfect. Now obviously you guys can kind of scale this according to what you're looking for. I like it, a little bit big, but not too big. That looks about right there. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to want to add the basic coloring to these. So I'm going to start by pasting in the layer style just to get the basic colors, but obviously that's not going to be quite right. Let's work with one of them. We're going to remove the stroke. I'm going to go into that gradient overlay, And we're just going to brighten it up just a little bit because we want these things to pop off of the bar. That looks okay right there. Let's go ahead and copy that over to the other one. And I think we can do a little bit better than that. So we're going to go back into the gradient, select the color that we've been working with. And one thing I'm noticing, the scale on the gradient is accounting for the entire shape. So let's drop it down just a little bit. And reposition it. You can see here that you can, basically move your gradient any way you want. That looks pretty good there. So again, we're going to copy, we're going to paste. And one final adjustment, let's tinker with that one last time. Kind of liked it before. Okay, so now we have this, very basic, diagonal pattern going over it. The last thing we want to do is we're going to add that same lighting effect that we did before with the brush. We're going to start a new layer. We're going to drop that on there. Obviously, because it's masked, you can't see it. So we're just going to drop it in here right now. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so it's more defined. And I'm going to set the overlay mode, or the blend mode, to, let's do hard light. And it's a very subtle effect, but again, we're basically just, giving the impression that this light is hovering over this loader button. So I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to go ahead and mask it off. The reason I'm doing that instead of inside this group is basically so that it hovers over this button as well. So let's go ahead and group all these layers together. Alright, perfect. So now you guys have this basic bar that can float around. You can use it in your own settings, if you want. You can change the color in the background right here. And all that stuff is set up. Okay, cool. So the final thing we're going to be creating right now is going to be the very basic scroll bar that you guys may have seen in the demo. How we're going to do that is pretty simple. We're going to select the rounded rectangle button. We're going to set the radius to 10 pixels. I'm going to start a new layer. And then again, looking at the info box, we're going to draw a long extended rectangle. Now, if this were a rectangle, you guys would notice the radius, kind of comes together when you bring it close enough. So we're setting the width to 10 pixels. Why are we doing that? So that we get a nice rounded circle up here at the top that matches the radius that we have. Okay, so we have this, nice light colored little, bar. So let's go ahead and duplicate that layer just once. And we're going to grab the 2 points at the top. We're going to slide it on down. Let's go ahead and recolor this quickly. Oops. I'm going to grab that and move it up. Okay, so now you have this basic, scroll bar. Again, we're going to use a very similar technique to what we used in here, but instead of basically nudging the points in, what we want to do is add a very simple stroke. Let's see if you guys can see this. To the inside of that shape, and let's set it to, let's start at 3 pixels and show you guys what I'm dealing with. We're going to click the color, and we're going to select the exact same color as the scroll bar. And what you're going to notice is it makes it look like that shape has been inset, even though it isn't. It's just a very quick shortcut. Let's go ahead and set it to 2 pixels. I think 2 pixels looks like about the best. So now you have this little scroll bar that's inset here. And the last thing that we can do if we want is to add a basic gradient to it. And again, we can grab the gradient from one of these. I'm just going to paste it on there really quick. Oops, didn't look like it stuck. That's fine. Alright, so the gradient that we want to add is going to be similar to what we were dealing with over here. I think we'll want to make it a little bit brighter. That's fine. Except what we really want is to set the angle to go from left to right. And again, I'm just tinkering with the colors here to get it about in the right spot. All right, perfect. All right, so that's about it. The next thing I'm going to do, just to kind of wrap this up, is basically reposition some of these shapes so that the document itself looks a little bit more tidy. And again, this is just, really basic cleanup stuff. All right, let's go ahead and lock those layers off there. I'm going to close up all of our folders. Let's go ahead and move the checkboxes and all that stuff over just a little bit to give it a little more room to breathe. Drop the download buttons down just a bit. And all right, you have a finished document. Oops, let's go ahead and group this scroll bar. And let's move everything into the center of the document, maybe down just a bit. And that looks about right. Okay, so now you guys have basically created your simple UI kit. The cool thing about this, obviously, is you guys can go back into these groups and drag your elements onto new documents as you want. And it's pretty much plug and play. If you guys want to go ahead and create some of these or convert them into smart objects, the cool thing about them is if you drop them into one document, you guys can go back and select the Edit Contents button, and you'll be able to edit the exact contents of that load bar, and it'll reflect in your document. So I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope you guys are able to go through and create your own versions of these and use them in your own projects. So thanks again for listening to Web Design Tuts, and you guys have a good one.